and now they'll walk us through what our Myers-Briggs type means and help us gain a better understanding of how our personalities can play a huge part in our career development.
Thanks, Maggie. Welcome, everyone. So I'm going to share my screen. Oh, look, everybody. I can see everybody now. I'm going to share my screen. We have a PowerPoint just to kind of keep us on track, but I promise this is going to be very fun and interactive. So I hope you're all ready to engage and participate, because that is going to make this what it is. So the MBTI, I know some of you have taken the MBTI before and are familiar with it. So for those of you who haven't, we're just going to give a quick kind of overview of what it is, so that you have some context for that. But we're really just going to jump in pretty quickly into having you look at your results and understanding those and be able to really kind of apply those to your life, because that's where this becomes super meaningful. So to give you the little context about the history of the Myers-Briggs, it was really developed out of the theoretical framework that Carl Jung came up with, that really started to look at that these differences seen between people aren't random, and that there really started to be some patterns, and what eventually became called typology and your MBTI type. So there's 6 MBTI types, and there's 4 different dichotomies, and we're going to talk through and have an activity actually for each of the 4 to kind of bring those to life for you and have you really kind of affirm those and confirm those. But just knowing that this is coming out of really kind of that psychology and understanding of human behavior. So not only the differences of human behavior, but then also looking at, okay, what are these patterns that we're seeing among and between people?
Okay, and hi everyone, my name is Tycho. So excited that you're all here. So one metaphor that could be helpful to help us understand this is if you could all put up your hands and fold your hands whichever way is more comfortable. Okay, and I'm sure that was natural, right? That was automatic. That's your preference. Now undo it, shake it up. Now do it the way you don't normally do it. It feels a little odd, right? It wasn't like that hard. It's not like you couldn't do it. It's not that you weren't capable. It's just not your preference. It's not the zone that you best operate in, or that you most quickly resort to. So that's kind of like how we can think about this. As you were taking the assessment, I'm sure that you could see the questions were asking you certain types of things, and maybe some you were like, oh, this is really hard. I'm kind of in between these. So as we'll see throughout the session, it's all on a spectrum. Even if you are 100% on one end, it's not that you can't function on the other side. It's just not your preference. And again, with this house picture that we have on the side, think of it as, pretend you're an ENTP. Maybe that's your favorite room of the house. That's the room you feel most comfortable and most authentic in. That's the living room. So if you were to go move over a room, it's still going to be part of your house. It's just not the automatic preference. So, yeah.
The other interesting thing about the Myers-Briggs, some of you may have taken other assessments, and actually I know some of you have asked to have codes sent for strong interest inventory and strengths quest, and that's also part of this week and the offerings of this week if anybody's interested. But one unique thing about the Myers-Briggs type indicator is that you actually confirm your type. So you're the one that kind of puts the stamp of approval on it. And so that's why we really do want to spend some time looking at each of the dichotomies and having you really own and decide what is, your type and what is your preference. So as we go through each of these, you have a reported type. So that's the one that came up on your report. And you, though, get to confirm, does that accurately describe me? Or am I going to flip to the other letter Sometimes you will flip if you have a very, very slight preference, right? So maybe you are 50-50. And so Maggie was sharing with us that when taking the assessment, some of them are like, I kind of feel like both, like, and torn between them. And so some of us do have a very slight preference in some of these, and we could go 50% of the time this way and 50% of the time that way. And so that might be the case where your reported type actually is different than what you end up confirming. And so we'll talk through that as we go. But it's kind of a neat part of the Myers-Briggs is that you get to be an active kind of participant in deciding, you know, kind of your final results. So speaking of your reported type, we'll have you now go to your assessment. So your assessment is a specific report just for you. I put up on the screen a sample so we can just kind of all be on the same page of where we're at. But if you could go to your reported type and look at your page 3, you'll see a summary of your MBTI results, and you'll see all 8 letters, but you'll see the ones that are shaded in, and those are your reported type. So the first one, you'll see that either the E or the I is shaded in, and that whichever one is shaded in is your reported type. So that's the one that you chose most of the time during the assessment. I'll also have you take a look at the bottom where it shows the clarity of the reported preferences. So for each preference, we have a certain clarity level, basically meaning how clear am I in wanting this preference most of the time. So in the sample report, you can see this person is extroverted and it has E and is very clear. So there are 26 out of 30. So really most of the time they'll choose the preference for extroversion. So it's kind of important to look not only at your letter, but at your clarity scale to see, is this one that I'm really clear on or I'm slight on? So this person, as an example, once we get to the 3rd preference, would probably really want to pay attention to say, okay, which one, because it's a slight preference, and this could be a case, right? If you're a 1 or a 2 or 3, where you might confirm the opposite one. So just kind of be looking not only at your letter, but also at your clarity number as we're going through these. So we're going to kind of flip back and forth between this, your report, also the kind of worksheet that we shared in the Google Doc. You can make a copy of that for yourself, and that's something for you to just really reflect on. Some of you might find it really helpful to kind of type in some things as we're going, some notes or some reflections. And others might just see it as a resource, and you're going to want to talk it out with other people. And we'll talk about which types would probably prefer one of those over the other in a little bit.